melting and forming. With his first batch of primitive glass in hand, Akshat was eager to refine his process. The cloudy, bubbly lump he'd created proved that glass making was possible, but he knew that to make truly useful objects, he needed to master the art of melting, shaping, and cooling glass with greater control. He began by experimenting with his kiln, aiming to reach and maintain the highest temperatures possible. He learned that stacking his fuel, dry hardwoods and carefully prepared charcoal, in a specific pattern allowed the fire to burn hotter and longer. By adjusting the vents and feeding the fire steadily, he could sustain the intense heat needed for glasswork. Scientific note: crucible and temperature control. A crucible is a heat-resistant container used to melt materials at high temperatures. Akshat shaped his crucibles from the finest clay he could find, firing them in his kiln to make them strong and less likely to crack. Maintaining a steady temperature is crucial. Glass forms best between 1000 degrees Celsius and 1200 degrees Celsius, 1832 to 2192 degrees Fahrenheit. Too cool, and the ingredients won't melt. Too hot, and the glass can become too runny or even damage the kiln. To improve the clarity and quality of his glass, Akshat sifted his sand to remove larger grains and impurities. He experimented with different ratios of sand, soda ash, and lime, keeping careful notes on which mixtures produced the clearest results. Sometimes, he added a bit of wood ash, which seemed to help the glass melt more smoothly. He also tried different ways of forming the molten glass. Using a long, green stick, he learned to gather a small blob of hot glass from the crucible and shape it by rolling it on a flat stone. He discovered that blowing gently through a hollow reed could create bubbles, though controlling the shape was difficult and often resulted in fragile, misshapen vessels. Scientific note: glass forming techniques. Early glassworkers used simple tools to shape molten glass. Rolling, pressing, and blowing through reeds are all ancient methods. The key challenge is working quickly. Glass solidifies as it cools, so every second counts. Cooling too quickly can cause the glass to crack, so ancient artisans often buried their creations in hot ashes to slow the cooling process, a step called annealing. Akshat's first successful objects were small: a thick-walled cup, a few glass beads, and a flat disc that shimmered in the sunlight. The beads, he realized, could be strung for decoration or trade. The cup, though imperfect, was watertight and easy to clean. He also experimented with making simple molds from clay. By pressing a rounded stone into wet clay and letting it dry, he created a shallow depression. Pouring molten glass into these molds produced smoother, more regular shapes. Scientific note: annealing and mold use. Annealing is the process of slowly cooling glass to relieve internal stresses. Without it, glass is brittle and prone to shattering. Molds, made from clay or carved stone, help shape glass into uniform forms. These techniques were used by some of the earliest glassmakers in history. By the end of several weeks, Akshat's skill had grown. He could produce small glass objects with fewer bubbles and cracks, and he understood how to control the process from raw materials to finished product. Each success brought him closer to his next goal: crafting lenses and mirrors to see the world in new ways.